I think our distinguished speakers online are already there. Please confirm. Tijs, Haar, Professor Andrew Leung, Professor Andrey, Kinyakin. Are you online? Paulo Duarte? Yeah, I believe so. So good afternoon, everyone. I have the honor of moderating this panel, and I'd like to start by thanking all the distinguished speakers here, both at the auditorium and online, as well as participants who have chosen to attend this panel. As you know from the program, the panel mentions Atlantic Pacific in its title. It is my responsibility, this concept, once it is something in which I've been working on in the last few years. But this reference does not designate or intends to designate a region, as in the case, for example, with Indo-Pacific, but rather refers to the growing geopolitical, economic, and security links between two regions, the Euro-Atlantic area and the Asia-Pacific. It is good to make this clarification to avoid misunderstandings. Before we begin the presentations by our distinguished speakers, I must inform you of the following changes in the panel. On the one hand, another presentation was added by Dr. Horácio Maria Gnere, entitled Belt and Road Initiative and the European Union, Two Integrative Models Compared. So this also means that all the presentations will have to be a little shorter in order to allow us a reasonable amount of time for debate at the end. So I please ask and thank in advance the best understanding from all the speakers to keep presentations to a maximum of 13 minutes each. The other change to the program is that we will start the panel with a presentation entitled China's Orwellian Society in the Making, the Security Dimension of the Digital Silk Road, by Paulo Duarte, António Tavares, Nasim, Mosavi, and Fernando Amorim at their request. Therefore, I leave immediately the floor to Professor Paulo Duarte to begin the team's presentation, and thank you for not exceeding 13 minutes, please. Thank you. Paulo?
Thank you, Professor Wishman. Thank you for your kindness in letting us be among the first ones to present due to some busy schedule. Also, I would like to extend our compliments to the rest of the organizers. It's a remarkable and very important initiative. We would like to be there in person, but unfortunately, this has been an alternative. So I don't know if you are able to see the screen. I'm trying to share with you. Let me just check here. Or maybe I can ask Fernando. Fernando, could you please share with us?
We are not seeing it yet.
I think Fernando is almost completing. Yeah. So basically, starting with the title, Fernando, could you please put, yeah. So our presentation is based on what we call China's Orwellian Society. I'm not seeing the title, but it should be in the beginning. Maybe Fernando will put, yeah. This is my co-authors, distinguished Professor António Tavares, dear Nasim, Mosavi, and Fernando. The title is China's Orwellian Society in the Making, and we will be focusing on the security dimension of the digital Silk Road. Why we do this, Fernando, you can change please the slide, because we believe that there has been a lot of academic works, research on I would say the Belt and Road Initiative, which comprises both the land and maritime corridors, and also and also how this impacts on fostering China's momentum and influence abroad. But when it comes to the third and most recent corridor of the so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which is called precisely the Digital Silk Road, this has been the object of less attention. Also because this was the most recent corridor to be announced by China. Contrary to the first two corridors, it has been only released in 2015. So that explains to a certain degree why there has been less production on the digital Silk Road, and even less production on assessing the security impacts of this digital Silk Road in terms of creating the so-called Orwellian society, which we believe to be the gap addressed by our research. And then, Fernando, because our time is short, you can move to the next slide, please. So basically, our research question is this one: how does the digital Silk Road contribute to creating a surveillance state in China and abroad? Because as my co-authors will mention, China is creating inside its social credit system, but there's also implications abroad because it's already trying to export this kind of technology. Our time frame is precisely from 2015 to the present, and that is quite obvious because we hear a lot of controversial issues regarding Huawei, and we will hear more in the future, because in our view, Western world has not enough capacity to cope with China's 5 and even 6 and 7G currently. But this will be and is already the future. So it's a matter not only of geoeconomics, but also of geopolitics. And this, as we have been witnessing, this has security implications. So, Fernando, you can move to the next slide, please. We believe another added value of this investigation, this research, is that we argue that NetPolitik that sees internet, the cyber domain, is becoming obsolete. We are used to hear about internet, the commercial view of internet, liberalism, the world based on altruism and a positive view, but there's also, I would say, a hidden aspect in China's digital Silk Road, which has to do not necessarily with NetPolitik, with liberalism, but more with what is called realism. Therefore, we argue that digital politic is being right now the present and the future, a future that is not only limited to NetPolitik. So basically, we are seeing states, and in this specific case, China, using the internet field, the cyber field, cyber domain, to do what realism defends, to promote its interests in a hybrid way through civil and military, and we will see more in the future. And this has huge implications for even monitoring citizens' behavior. So basically, that's our claim. And now I will give the word to Nasim, which will go into the details, but also respecting, of course, our time.
Thank you very much, Professor Paulo. So China, with over 1 billion internet user and massive adoption of advanced technologies such as AI and quantum computing has been transformed to a cyber leader. Based on that, Chinese government has given a specific attention to data as a fundamental strategic resource in China. So focusing on creating data centers, data collection policies, and security and privacy is significant in order to secure the economical and military benefit, also political and social aspects. Next slide. The social credit system is a project which is a consequence of digital transformation process in China. So applying sophisticated surveillance and monitoring in order to track people inside China and provide scores which strongly influence the quality of living inside China, like, for example, facilitating the loan or job opportunity for individuals. So the main objective of the social credit system is to track people and to make them accountable for their actions. Next slide, please. Golden Shield project is a project released in 1998 in order to facilitate the police operations in China, provide a network of CCTV, and it's another project using surveillance system in order to detect and monitor people's action. And also it's expanding the social aspects. And for example, the Great Firewall of China is as a project for censorship and filtering the internet, again, in order to monitor and control, in fact, the flow of information. And the main goal of that is to create a local internet culture inside China. And next slide. So based on this policy, Xinjiang is a very sensitive topic. It's a sensitive border area. In fact, is a showcase and test environment for China, using maximum number of surveillance and applying big data policy and using artificial intelligence technology in order to apply more restriction and more monitoring on people's action, which really raise a lot of international attention in terms of human rights and ethical issues. Another example of using surveillance and big data policies in China is in the time of COVID, when in fact, the surveillance could detect the temperature of people and divide them and group them based on the health status. So provide a specific code or color in order to different people based on the health status. So some projects like this shows how China is take advantage of advanced technology in order to apply more control and monitoring and people along with the political and the social aspects. I think I'm going to pass this presentation to my colleague. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, following Nasim, I'm going to start to do is exploring the digital Silk Road abroad China, and I will elaborate a little bit on this, uncovering a vast impact on the global landscape. Firstly, I want to examine a little about the China Belt and Road Initiative stretching far beyond the borders, as this digital network shapes the world in profound ways, because the technology that China is bringing abroad is starts to connect with the countries from the especially for us, the countries on the west, and they China start to try to lock them in contracts in a way that the technology advances, like 5G networks, now 6G starting, in satellites systems such as Baidu, belonging to China, make those countries dependent on the Chinese decisions. Now I want to talk a little bit about the players, those private players that a little change that have started on China in 1912. I'm sorry, in 2012, then 2015 start to change to the private sector, and this private sector they created a huge companies that to export this the role of China, or the power of China across the world. The example that we are studying started with Huawei, because the impact that had with the 5G, and Baidu and Costco. Huawei is a leading player in China telecommunication industry, and we had an huge impact on the global when they started a global expansion with the 5G networks, and even USA and in Europe noticed that some unauthorized access to sensitive information was compromising our security. Sorry. Next, Baidu is a China navigation satellite system that competes with our GPS and the GLONASS in offering.
Fernando, sorry to interrupt you. You have 1 minute to finish your presentation, okay?
Oh, sorry.
You
Then
can add
okay.
something in the end.
Sorry. Okay, I go ahead, and then the Baidu would be the problem with the system of satellites, and Costco, that's a China ocean shipping company. Then you have like a global market, connecting global market marine. I have to pass then, because I would talk a little. Oops.
Yeah, Fernando, I suggest moving now to Professor Tavares.
Yes.
And I have here the updated PowerPoint. Let me give me 1 second. So the conclusion, you can see, right? Professor Tavares, you have to unmute your
I
sound.
made my compliments to the organization, and in a quiet moment, what we have here about is the control and the spread of information, and also the biggest markets that we have here for military use and civil use. And you can see in this moment we have already problems with Huawei. We made some contests, for instance, in Portugal. And we have also in the military use and proposed by the war between Ukraine and Russia. And this is for winning hearts and minds, a kind of soft power in this crucial in future wars, the soft power, the hard power, and the shared power. And here we have is more the shared power to try to have the meaning and the thinking of the persons. Can you send show the last slide? And this is very important, because is what is crucial in the future wars is that we don't, and we saw that in Ukraine war, that we don't only have the hard power, the power of the weapons, but also the power of minds and the power of information. And this is what we try to tell you and to understand to our panel. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting you and speed it up, but we need to move forward. Thank you. I'm sure there are going to be several questions on this very interesting topic that you bring us. Now we move further with Tijs. Sorry if I'm not correct in saying your name, with a presentation titled "The Pact Between Two Doves: An Analysis of EU-Japan Security Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific." Tijs, are you with us online? Unmute. Unmute.
You can hear.
Yeah. 13 minutes, please. Yeah, we see your PowerPoint. Please unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Could you please unmute? Tijs, can you hear us? Tijs, can you hear us? Please send a message. We move forward with the next presentation. Tijs, we're going to interrupt you to move forward with Professor Andrey Leung with the presentation "China's Role in a Multipolar World." Professor Leung, can you hear us? Great panel, many technical problems. Professor Andrey Leung. No, he's not there anymore. Okay, move forward. And let's try Professor Andrey Kinyakin. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Please,
Thank you.
yours.
Well, I will try to share my screen and go on with my presentation. Just a minute.
Yes,
Excuse me. Do you see my? Do you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
Great.
go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for a great opportunity to take part in your event. My topic is global integration special purpose vehicles as tool of interregional cooperation, pros and cons. So I'm preoccupied with topic of about a year, and at the moment I'm writing a couple of articles concerning the topic of global integration SPVs, taking into account not only the experience of such project like Belt and Road Initiative of China, but also the global gateway strategy of the European Union, which is at the moment is evolving really fast. But first, just a bit about the theoretical framework of my report. If we take the theory of regionalism, so the first step, it was well, the old regionalism concerning the activity of such well, integration structures like European Economic Community from 1950s up to 1990s, and also European Free Trade Association. the new regionalism puts the special emphasis not only on economic cooperation, but also in cooperation in political sphere and so on. So if we take, for instance, EU or ASEAN or Eurasian Economic Union, they have not only economic backbone, but also the political backbone. Now we have the transformation of regionalism theories into so-called interregionalism, which envisage the connectivity between different regions and between different regional structures. And if we take as an example, for instance, Shanghai Cooperation Organization or regional comprehensive economic partnership in the Pacific, this is the point of interregionalism when we've got several actors. It could be not only the states, but it could be also the supranational entities which try to actually bolster the integration regionally between themselves. So the next step is the so-called transregionalism. It is mainly connected with political agenda, and transregionalism is mainly political driven, given the fact, especially that at the moment, geopolitical agenda is prevailing, and transregionalism, if we see, for instance, the activities of the European Union towards different integration blocks. So this is one of the major features of this transregionalism. Here's some kind of model which I made and try to compare different types of regionalism. The more interesting thing is that if we take, for instance, interregionalism and transregionalism, such things like geoeconomics and geopolitics are the backbones of this type of regionalism. And if we take, for instance, transregionalism, the main thing is actually the competition in global contest, global race, and the main point is actually building, achieving the global leadership. Just to be short, I just put two citations, one from Frederick Söderbaum. He's a well-respected specialist on regionalism and interregionalism. First of all, he put special emphasis on within interregionalism as form of regionalism on region-to-region relations. This is actually one of the major feature of interregionalism when we've got cooperation activities between different regions. If we take transregional, as I said, this is politically driven mainly form of regionalism, and politics prevails, especially in form of geopolitics. And here's the stake is not only the competition and the prize is global governance, but also the constructivist model, which emphasize the value-driven approach towards integration cooperation prevails. So we have here must have common values, shared values, actually, to have this integration cooperation between different actors going. So what is actually global integration special purpose vehicle as I actually define it? From my point of view, it's some kind of special tool of interregional and transregional integration. I will later just elaborate on this thing concerning this kind of a hybrid mixture of interregional and transregional integration. Which has actually geopolitical and geoeconomic backbones. So the goals of geopolitical and geoeconomic goals actually are mainly pursued. And the major aim is actually providing connectivity with extra-regional actors. So the actors which are outside our region, and this region could be also not only in the vicinity, it could be, for instance, on other continent. And the actors with whom we try to cooperate to provide this connectivity could be not only national, but also supranational, so integration blocks and so on. Here's the feature, a global character of action, geoeconomic and mainly geopolitical activities as a backbone. advanced functionality, cooperation in different spheres, and lack of entrenched institutionalism. So this is so-called model FTA+, which is actually the backbone for this integration cooperation. Focus not only cooperation with national, but also supranational actors, and also entrenched constructivist model, which I have already mentioned. So value-driven approach toward integration cooperation, so shared values and so on. What about actually the examples? Now we've got different, from my point of view, types of special purpose vehicle. The pioneer, it was Belt and Road Initiative of China, which has not, at the moment, has not only geoeconomic dimension, but also some kind of geopolitical dimension, given the fact that China, which, for instance, concerning, for instance, the previous presentation about the Chinese digital road. This is also one of the mechanisms for providing, providing Chinese influence in different worlds and so on. But I will focus mainly on global gateway strategy of the European Union, which was launched in 2021, and also the project Build Back Better World, BW3, which was adopted also in 2021 on the summit of G7 in Cornwall in England. And at the moment, if we take actually the good examples actually of this global integration SPVs, from my point of view, it's mainly Belt and Road and also global getaway. But this practice is going on, and I can see that some countries, for instance, India, also try to put forward some kind of initiative which could be also the special purpose vehicles and to be some kind of alternatives to, first of all, Belt and Road Initiative. So if we take the situation with how it goes, well, I just make some kind of case study of global getaway strategy, but I must emphasize that the main point of this global integration SPVs, first of all, given actually this aim of providing connectivity, is fostering the construction and development of infrastructure, first of all, transport infrastructure. If we take, for instance, Belt and Road Initiative, you see here's the lots of different so-called belts. First of all, this is the transport corridors, which actually provide connectivity between and different regions of the world. If we take, for instance, global getaway strategy, about 4 days ago, it was a really interesting point concerning the launch of so-called India-West Asia-Europe corridor, which is dedicated actually to be some kind of alternative to Belt and Road belts and so on. So concerning the case study, I put some information about global gateway strategy. So the main goal is enhancing international cooperation with different types of actors, and also, as I previously said, about the geopolitical backbone of global integration SPVs, proliferation of European values, and defending democracy around the world. So the budget is 300 billion within the period up to 2027. And if we take, for instance, the spheres in which Belt and Road, global getaway is going to evolve, this is not only transport infrastructure, but also climate and energy, digital health, education and research. Well, about the geopolitical backbone, I just put also the citation from the person who today delivered actually the State of the Union address in the European Parliament, the head of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who emphasized in 2022 that global getaway is above all a geopolitical project. So this is actually the essence of this project, and at the moment many activities, for instance many projects with different countries are also tend to be geopolitical ones, I must say. Here's the map with the different countries which take part actually as partners within Global Gateway Strategy. Just to give you more clues about this project, I put some information about different projects on different continents. You see here's actually the main continent for cooperation. It's Africa. There are about 30 different projects underway. But region of Europe, especially the Western Balkans, are our strategic interest for the European Union, and this is quite understandable. Here's the information about the EU Global Gateway Strategy projects in Latin America, and also in Eurasia, first of all, concerning such countries like Kazakhstan and post-Soviet space, Mongolia, and others. And in the Pacific region is also of the special importance for Global Gateway Strategy. Here's the information about the partners within Belt and Road Initiative, and I must tell you that at the moment, from 144 up to 148 countries signed the Memorandum of Understanding with China, and this is actually also the specifics of this global integration SPVs. It means actually the lack of entrenched institutionalization. It means actually that the model of this FTA plus, we've got this memorandum of understanding signed. It means actually we can cooperate and so on. Is the working model actually. And more specifically, I just put your attention on different world region which are of special interest for different global integration SPVs. It means actually that it can spur some kind of competition between this global integration SPVs, and what I call is actually global integration race. The special importance is Africa due to the huge resources of this region. On the second place is Indo-Pacific region. And the third place, actually, the Latin America, but also valid not only for the European Union with its strategy Global Gateway, but also for China, is a region of Central Europe, and especially this Western Balkans, given, for instance, lots of investments of China into such countries like Montenegro, Serbia, and so on.
Sorry, Andrey, could you please start concluding because time is running?
Just to be short, I made just to give you some clues about the pros and cons of this global integration SPVs. I made the comparative analysis of two projects, Global Gateway and Belt and Road Initiative. And you see here's the different categories of criteria. So intrinsic features, strategy type, resource availability, attractiveness, goal achievement, ability, and so on. The second category is cooperation, different forms of cooperation which can be, which are run within this project. And the third category, this is the governance, so how it goes, and what is more effective and what is less effective. And the fourth, this is actually the category benefits. Benefits distribution mode, how it goes, obtained benefit type, benefit sphere, benefit extraction duration for all parties, and also benefit conversion ability, economic into political. And just to make the conclusions about 30 seconds. What I tried actually to sum up, first of all, global integration SPVs is the new types of tools of integration, global integration cooperation. It is kind of hybrid between interregional and trans-regional integration. Global integration SPVs pursue not only economic, geoeconomic, but at the moment more and more geopolitical goals, and geopolitics is a backbone. Global integration SPVs, multi-dimensional entities, both institutionally, different level of institutionalization. If we take, for instance, China, this is memorandum of understanding with the European Union. It is not so. It is a bit sophisticated. In comparison with China, there are certain areas, world macro regions of action of global integration SPVs. Second, the next one, the probability of competition, global integration race is rather high. given the overlapping of areas of action. And probably last but not least, this is that geopolitical essence, especially value-driven approach, is not probably the best option for fostering integration and cooperation with different regions. For instance, Africa, given the fact that lots of African countries are not democratic but authoritarian, it should be, I would say, more flexible approach towards this kind of cooperation. That would be all. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for being, well, not so eloquent. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Andrey Kinyakin. I please ask again the following the speakers to keep your presentations on the 13 minutes given to have enough time for discussion. In the end, you could add some comments, some arguments, but thank you again. Now we try again with Tijs Haar from Belgium. Tijs, let's try again. We cannot hear you. Please unmute. No, it's not working. Well, we'll try again later. Now I give the floor to Nadia, who is right next to me. Is not there online. Is there Professor Andrey Leung? Can you hear us? Okay, so I'm now giving the floor. Sorry, I saw you on the topic China's role in the multipolar world. Professor Andrey Leung? And mute yourself, please.
Oh, okay. I thought we are not
okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, still 15 minutes.
Sorry?
Still 15 minutes to go. We're not starting yet, right?
Yeah, the panel has already started, but now
really?
I'm giving you the floor. You can go.
Oh, I
please.
see. So I need to share the screen then.
Yeah.
Because it seems that there is a. So can you see my presentation?
Not your presentation. We are seeing something related with Zoom.
Let me just see. Because I thought it was 11:30, Hong Kong time.
Oh yeah, in Lisbon time, you already started 45 minutes ago.
Oh wow! How come? How come? My goodness. Let me find my my presentation. Wow. I already started sharing the screen. Why it's not there? Let me just say.
Someone will send you an email to send your presentation. So
are you seeing? Let me just see. Are we seeing the presentation now?
No.
Oh wow.
What I'm going to ask you, please, is to send your presentation by email. Someone will send you the address
can you play it?
And we move forward with the next presentation, and then we return to you.
Well, I already sent it to the chair this morning. I've already sent the presentation to the chair.
They will send you another email on the chat. Please send again. Now we move forward with another presentation, and then we back to you.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. So I give the floor now to Nadia Loureiro with the presentation titled "The Parliamentary Assembly of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Consolidation of the Article 2 of the Washington Treaty." Okay, let's hear you, Nadia.
Let me just test the presentation. It's not there. No, I'm presenting myself. Yes. My name is Nadia Loureiro. I'm a PhD student at Nova University here in Lisbon. This is it's not a research related to my doctoral thesis. It's about a research that I was doing about parliamentary diplomacy, and I find out some interesting connections between international government organization and international parliamentary organizations. From this research, I want to show you the case of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, which I refer to hereafter as NATO PA to be more faster, and its role in consolidating the Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty. So, as I begin this presentation, it is appropriate to ask the starting question: how can NATO PA contribute to the consolidation of the Article 2 within NATO? Sorry, the slides are a little bit cuddled in the bottom, but by email I can send you the slides. I don't know why they are with this format. Also, as a contribution to the panel, and if I have time, I will try to specify in the short term how NATO PA and NATO has addressed the geopolitical and security issues of the Indo-Pacific region, and what are the direct implications for the Euro-Atlantic security. Well, NATO was created in 1949 in response to a growing threat posed by the Soviet communism and the Cold War tensions that developed between the United States and this Western alliance and the states of the Warsaw Pact. With only 14 articles, this document, the Letter of the Atlantic or the Charter of the Atlantic, was provided for the sharing risk, responsibility, and benefit of collective defense between the signatory states, enriched in the Article 5 mainly. And this article, it's being the basic principle of the alliance since the beginning. But there are other 13 articles, and here I'm trying to explain you a little bit more the Article 2. And what does it say is this Article 2? Well, the Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty plays an important role in establishing the fundamental principles and the objectives of the alliance. This article lays the foundations for cooperation, solidarity between NATO members, and it is crucial to the cohesion and function of the organization itself as international organization and not alliance of defense. In terms of fundamental principles, the Article 2 states that NATO members undertake to settle their international dispute by peaceful means and to maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attacks. This reflects the members' commitment to international peace, security, and stability. Also, in terms of multilateral cooperation, the parties shall endeavor to eliminate any opposition between their respective international economic policies and shall encourage economic collaboration between each of them. So the Article 2 is very different from the Article 5, which is better known. The Article 5 stipulates that an armed attack against one or more NATO member states is considered an attack against all members, and that members must take individual and collective measures to restore and maintain security in the North Atlantic region. Well, this is an article for collective defense. The Article 2, in the other hand, deals with the general principles of objectives of the alliance, just to develop of peaceful and friendly international relations by strengthening their free institution. In short, the Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty establishes the fundamental principles of cooperation, solidarity, and peace among NATO members, pillars that cement a community that share the same values, in fact, democratic values. This article brings to the treaty the fact that NATO is more than a collective defense alliance, but also a community of values united in its commitment to democracy, individual freedoms, human rights, and rule of law. And what about NATO PA? What is NATO PA and what it says about all this? Well, NATO PA It's a parliamentary international organization and dates the Cold War period when the growing tensions between the two superpowers led NATO members to look for various ways to strengthen the transatlantic ties between the United States and Europe. The idea of engaging the alliance parliamentarians in a collective deliberations of the problems confronting the transatlantic partnership first imagined in the early of the 50s. The proposal came from Norway and was aimed to create an interparliamentary institution within the central structure of the organization, which will facilitate the transatlantic interaction by strengthening the interparliamentary cooperation, using the parliamentary diplomacy as an instrument to facilitate the community between states. But this proposal did not receive sufficient support from the other states of NATO. Even so, the Canadian Parliamentary Association of NATO, that was founded in 1954, organized the first conference of members of the parliaments of NATO countries, which took place in Paris in 1955 and brought together 158 parliamentarians from, at the time, 14 member states of NATO. Here is the picture of one of the founders of NATO PA, the British MP Geoffrey de Freitas, that wrote on that time, the Interparliamentary Organization is a special forum for international parliamentary dialogue within a framework of security and economic affairs. And about the structure of NATO PA. Since its creation, NATO PA has provided a unique and specialized forum for parliamentarians from across the Atlantic Alliance to debate and influence decisions and security. The Assembly is institutionally separated from NATO. It's totally independent, but serves as an essential link between NATO and the parliamentarians of NATO countries. It provides a greater transparency for NATO's policies and promotes a better understanding of the alliance's goals and missions among legislators and citizens. Crucially, it helps to strengthen the transatlantic relationship and the values that underpin the alliance. NATO PA has an independent secretariat, an independent earthquake based in Brussels, just as NATO, and have an official structure, as you can see, composed by president, bureau, committees, and other special groups dedicated as NATO itself. How it works, the plenary sessions are annually in spring and fall, and normally before the NATO intergovernmental meeting, and the themes that are debated, most of them are the same that are debated after intergovernmental level. In each sessions, the committees produce thematic resolutions expressing the views of the Assembly in that area, which are voted and addressed for the North Atlantic Council in the form of resolutions. There are also the Rose-Roth seminar that gives organized conferences, seminars that aim to support and develop parliamentary democracy in Central and Eastern European countries. And what about NATO and NATO PA? Well, how can we establish a connection? In 1956, the North Atlantic Council mandated three ministers of foreign affairs of Canada, Italy, and Norway, and what is now the Commission of Three, to prepare a report. This report, there is note of the report of the three wise men, proposed that as well as serving as a vehicle of political cooperation, the alliance should cooperate in areas such as economy, science, technology, and culture, as it says the Article 2. This view was shared by the Conference of NATO Parliamentarians, who believed that themselves should address not only the alliance's military dimension and concerns, but also in accordance with the Article 2, as I said, the whole spectrum of issues important to their community of nations based on shared values and common principles. In fact, The Assembly's creation reflected a desire of the part of the legislators of the NATO's countries to give substance to the premise of the Washington Treaty, especially Article 2, that NATO is an alliance of democracies above everything. In this context, the NATO PA has been institutionally separated from NATO, as I said, since its inception, although today is a fundamental link between the alliance and its member states. And why? Because through its debates, it promotes the sense of Atlantic solidarity in different national legislations in line with objectives of the Atlantic Alliance. NATO PA also lends democratic legitimacy and greater transparency to the measures approved by governments within NATO frameworks, while promoting a better understanding of its objective missions among alliance legislators and citizens. In addition to the traditional parliamentary functions of overseeing defense politics and armed forces, for example, the budget, and the deployment of forces abroad NATO, NATO PA seeks, by parliamentary diplomacy, to build consensus and guarantee transparency and create and maintain public support to NATO initiatives and international positions. So, trying to answer to my initial question, in NATO's geopolitical context, NATO PA is not just a forum for discussion, but a tangible embodiment of the governmental organization democratic values. Since its foundation, the parliamentarians who make up NATO PA have wanted to contribute to the development and success of the Atlantic Ally through cooperation between the Atlantic nations in implementing the provisions of the Article 2. NATO PA is the only forum that regulatory brings together European and American legislations. It's the only one, and has helped to sustain the transatlantic relationship, shaping into a successful cooperation network and goes beyond the governmental sphere. The Assembly turned the functioning and policy of NATO more transparent and understandable for parliamentarians and their public opinion. NATO PA also helps states to want to join alliance to develop their democratic values by bringing them as observers to its meeting and training them. For all these reasons, while over the years NATO have spent too much time focusing on military potential of the Article 2, while forgetting the strategic political importance of other articles of the founding documents, NATO PA has sought to go further on its actions, focusing mainly on the importance of the non-military problems like economic, culture, and scientific issues over the years have been fundamental for the consolidation of NATO and its principles right up to the present day. Well, I have here a small contribution that I just let you slide. It's just to say that just right before the strategic the strategic concept of NATO for 2030. Sorry, I think. Countries like Japan, Australia, and Republic of Korea a long time ago participated in NATO PA meetings, but I ask you to read in the future my essay that explained this in more detail. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nadia. We're very looking for your thesis and your essays on this topic that probably not many people pays attention. Thank you. Tijs, let's try again with you. And Professor Andrew Leung, please check your chat, your Zoom chat.
Can you
Someone
hear me
sent
now?
you the email for you to send us again your presentation, your PowerPoint presentation. Tijs?
Yes,
Tijs?
can you hear me?
Oh, finally, I can hear your voice.
Okay, great.
Oh, please go
My
ahead.
apologies for the technical error. And thank you for the opportunity to present at this conference. I'll try to share my screen. Oh, there's another screen being
No,
shared,
this
I
is
think.
Professor Andrew Leung's presentation. can you share your own screen, or
Yes.
someone from the technical team, please remove this
I
presentation.
think.
This is the following. Yeah.
Can you see my presentation now?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. I'll get right into it. So I'm presenting on security cooperation between Japan and the EU. This was my master thesis that I wrote for my graduation from KU Leuven this year. So I'll be talking first, introduce you guys to the topic real quick. Then I'll talk about the EU and Japan as security actors. I'll talk about the relationship between them, about the Indo-Pacific as a geopolitical theater, and then finally about my findings about Japan's role in the EU's approach to the Indo-Pacific and geopolitics in that area. So introduction to the topic, the inspiration for the research came from the publication of the EU's first official Indo-Pacific strategy on September 16th, 2021. And I decided to look specifically at cooperation between the EU and Japan because both are non-traditional security actors, but nonetheless play a role in security in the Indo-Pacific region. So I came to the research question, how does the EU-Japan relationship affect the security goals of the EU in its Indo-Pacific strategy? And the themes that I deal with throughout this thesis are the EU and Japan as security actors, their profiles in security and defense, the relationship between them and how it has developed over time into a very comprehensive strategic relationship that does in fact include defense policy, geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific, security and defense, political military security as an overarching theme. And then I apply in my analytical section regional security complex theory by Barry Buzan and Ola Weaver to make sense of what is going on in the Indo-Pacific. First, let's talk about the EU as a security actor. Of course, the EU has a long history of gradual development of its competences in general, and its security and defense competences have been part of its competences since the early 1990s, mainly with the Maastricht Treaty. And ever since, it has been developing its security and defense profile, increasing, sort of gradually building it with the CFSP, CSDP, the European External Action Service, and other tools have been added since recently, the Coordinated Maritime Presences tool. And what if you trace sort of the development of the European defense, security and defense policy, you can see that in recent years it has really developed a sense of urgency with regards to the need for it to act as a geopolitical actor on the international stage. So I've included some quotes from the 2022 Strategic Compass, in which the EU defines the present as an era of strategic competition and complex security threats that requires the EU to increase its presence, effectiveness, and visibility in its neighborhood, but also on the global stage through joint efforts and investments. So we can see that the EU currently really also sees itself as an actor that has to be present on the international stage. Then if we move to Japan, the EU is not a traditional security actor. Japan, even though it's a nation state and not a supranational actor, is also not your standard state actor. And that is due to its constitution that was imposed or adopted after the Second World War, that includes Article 9 prohibiting it from having an army and revoking its right of belligerency. So it does have the Japanese self-defense forces, but those are not a traditional army, even though they do possess all the qualities. And that has to do with the fact that Japan has, despite this constitutional obstacle, it has been developing a security and defense policy for itself through reinterpretations of the constitution. Even though the letter of the law says that they cannot have an army, reinterpretations have made it possible that they sort of under the or claiming that it's self-defense, they have developed a navy, an air force. So they are in fact a defense actor of sizable proportions right now. And in recent years, the late Prime Minister Abe Shinzo and current Prime Minister Kishida Fumio, they have significantly developed Japan's security and defense policy in response to increasing tensions in the Indo-Pacific region. Japan feels it cannot really avoid having a proper defense policy anymore, with rising tensions, with North Korea being an unreliable neighbor, and it feels the need to step up and fulfill its international responsibility. So moving on to the next slide. So over the past years, both actors have developed, have become serious security and defense actors, and that has also shown in their relationship. The relationship with the EU and Japan started out as purely economic, but since the early 1990s, it has gradually developed into a strategic partnership, mainly because of the end of the Cold War, changing the geopolitical landscape at the global level. And they have been strengthening their relationship through various treaties, structural political dialogue, and consistent joint positions in international fora, such as, for example, the United Nations. The areas of cooperation currently also include many areas regarding security and defense, such as the regulation of international arms trade, counterterrorism, and nuclear non-proliferation. And they have solidified most recently their strategic partnership through the strategic partnership agreement between the EU and Japan that formulates, apart from these very specific areas that they aim to cooperate on, also a more abstract shared commitment to multilateralism, protection of international security, and a commitment to upholding a rules-based international order. Those are all, of course, commendable ideas, but there's also concrete cooperation that has been achieved, and that's where really this political military aspect comes in. Japan has participated in several of the EU's CSDP missions, for example, in the Gulf of Aden, peacekeeping missions in Mali and Niger. And Japan also is inviting the EU to participate in naval exercises in the Indo-Pacific region. So we can see that the relationship currently does definitely have a security and defense dimension. Then if we start looking at the Indo-Pacific as a geopolitical arena, just a rough sketch, it's of course a vast area, comprises the area from the east coast of Africa to the Pacific Islands, and it's of major economic importance to the world. It is home to vital sea lines of communication running through Southeast Asia, for example. It is set to grow to even larger proportions in terms of population and economy. There's vital economies in the region, like the production of semiconductors in Taiwan. So the Indo-Pacific is important for global prosperity, really, but it also is home to several geopolitical challenges, most notoriously the China-Taiwan issue, the Taiwan Strait issue, but also contestation over other maritime areas, many of which, like these issues, revolve around China claiming certain areas that other states do not agree are China's to claim. There's military buildup in the region. There's, of course, the issue of North Korea being unreliable. And there is, apart from China, also other countries that are subject to democratic instability and illiberalism. So it's not a stable region in that sense. And the EU recognizes both the importance of the Indo-Pacific, but also the fact that it might be more prone to instability than Europe or North America, for that matter. And it's the region also home to various of the EU's partners like Japan, South Korea, the ASEAN group. So it's the EU is very much aware of the need to prevent the escalation of tensions in the Indo-Pacific, because it could have a negative impact on a global scale. And in order to, so the EU wants to engage with the Indo-Pacific region in order to promote stability, and it has produced the 2021 Indo-Pacific strategy to structure its engagement. And it has set several goals that it has for the region, which roughly come down, I've sort of summarized them into the following 4 points, which is to increase engagement with the Indo-Pacific region to contribute to regional stability, to protect and promote the rules-based international order, and promote things such as democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, to stimulate international cooperation, not only between the EU and actors in the region, but also at the regional level and at the bilateral level. And then finally, to ensure an open trade and investment environment and improve connectivity in the region. And this final point ties back into the presentation earlier on the Belt and Road Initiative. It's sort of the EU's, or as I interpreted it in my thesis, it's sort of the EU's answer to that initiative, to the BRI. But then if we focus on the security and defense aspect, it's the EU saying that it wants to increase its presence, but how would that take place? It has formulated that. It wants to increase its physical presence in the region through CSDP missions, coordinated maritime presences, and naval exercises and patrols with partners in the region. It does emphasize this cooperation with partners multiple times. But at the same time, apart from its own engagement, it wants to facilitate and strengthen regional security infrastructure by funding, but also by sending EU staff experts towards the region. And I wanted to highlight here that this cooperation with partners is continuously emphasized in the document. And out of all the partners that are mentioned, Japan is mentioned most, 22 times throughout the document, which in light of my thesis was a significant statistic. Then, sort of having gathered all this information on the EU and Japan as security actors, their relationship, and on the Indo-Pacific as a geopolitical arena, I applied the theory of Zonnenweber's regional security complex theory, which is a very extensive toolkit to analyze regional security dynamics. And the reason I use it is because I believe it accounts very well for the interplay between the regional and the global level. And you can use it to demonstrate how regional dynamics will have repercussions at the global level, and therefore invite the involvement of global powers into a certain region. So these global powers, the EU is a global power, China is of course a global power, Japan is also a global power. They may elect a regional theater to compete with each other, but the competition that's taking place there actually is very relevant for global level stability, and I think that's what we're seeing in the Indo-Pacific. So. As I mentioned, the Indo-Pacific regional security complex is crucial to global level stability and thus attracts the involvement of global powers, including the EU, but also the US, of course. And with increased instability in recent years in the Indo-Pacific, mainly resulting from aggressive or at least assertive behavior by China within the regional security complex, has given the EU an incentive to get involved and try to do its part in maintaining stability. And at the same time, trying to prevent China from venturing too far outside the Indo-Pacific RSC, because the EU right now enjoys a very stable RSC of its own in Europe, on the European continent. So to circle back to the research question, what's the role of the EU-Japan relationship in the EU's approach to the Indo-Pacific? I came to the following points. Japan is definitely significant for the EU's approach to the Indo-Pacific because, for one, it's a like-minded partner that has similar objectives.
1 minute to conclude, if you please.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, so Japan is a like-minded partner that also wants to uphold the rules-based international order, and it is useful for Europe because it can function as a guide in the region. It's an actor inside the region that has long-standing experience dealing with China as a rival. And the fact that it invites the EU to participate in the regional security of the Indo-Pacific also provides the EU with legitimization for its involvement. Then lastly, combining the political and economic weight of the EU and Japan is a way of dissuading China from unilateral change to the status quo and antagonizing either the EU or Japan. And apart from that political economic weight, the fact that they've both been strengthening their security and defense profiles in recent years only adds to this sort of the security coalition currently surrounding China. So yes, this is the conclusion. I sort of summed it up again. The EU and Japan both are not traditional security actors, but have been developing their security and defense profiles since the early 1990s. The Indo-Pacific is a vital RSC for global security and stability, mainly due to the role of China, and thus attracts involvement of the EU. And Japan is not only facilitating, but also amplifying the potential of the EU's involvement in the region, and legitimizing it as well. That's what I wanted to present, and thank you for listening. I hope I'm on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tijs. Thank you for this presentation. And now we move forward with Professor Andrew Leung. Let's try share your presentation, and I give you immediately the word. Please unmute.
I just want to make sure that you've got my presentation right on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me just try again whether I can share this the screen on my side first and see whether it works. If not, then
Okay.
now is it working?
Nope.
Oh well, in which case then I'll just use my screen, and then you use the presentation on your screen. Okay.
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 Please.
Now so I'll begin
Leung
because of the lack of time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, now I'll be very quick because there are many slides, so you may not be able to follow on your screen, but I advise you to listen me carefully. Okay, now I think that we are in the lingering unipolar moment where the end of history, the hype about the end of history as if there is only one political system, this moment is about to pass. Because the unrivaled American hegemony seems to be facing a downturn, at least. There is a premature US-led triumphalism over Russia's Ukraine misadventure at the beginning, but now the war is dragging on and there is no end in sight. And then the war of attrition is affecting all sides. So it's still no end. And so this early triumphalism is subsiding a bit. And then New Delhi, the G20's communique somehow buttressed the hope for, again, a US-led global order. But looking deeper, this may not be the case. As the edifice of American capitalism seems to be crumbled with the society divided, extremely unequal distribution of wealth, and then the political system hijacked by dark money and also big companies. And of course, there is Robert Kennedy wrote this book about even the coronavirus pandemic seemed to have enriched the multi-billionaires at the expense of the ordinary people. So the society becomes even more polarized. But the signs of a declining US hegemony began with the financial crisis, 2008, and then the failed wars in the Middle East. And now more recently, a historic rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and then the BRICS expansion with a lot of countries lining up to join the BRICS. It also signaled that the global South is getting a bit of fed up being pushed around. Not that they would like to fight the United States, but at least they want to have a more powerful coalition to further their own sovereign interest. And then you look at the United States, the country seems to be a little bit broken, to say the least, with rising homelessness, the world's largest prison population, and even the speech is a cancel culture, curtailing free speech. There was a deeply divided country with crumbling infrastructure compared with other countries, and especially China. And then, according to The Economist, the definition of democracy, the United States seems to become a flawed democracy. That's not my word. That's the word of the Economic Intelligence Unit, falling behind many countries because of the fractured political system. And then, of course, the aggressive use of the sanctions have diluted the dollar's dominance. Now, President Biden seemed to be have more success in building American better when Trump utterly regarded this particular area, and then with the CHIPS Act and the infrastructural kind of measures. Now, he's also launched two initiatives, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and the regional, but then the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, how does it compare with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is the world's largest, third largest trading bloc, accounting for a third of the population, a third of the world GDP, whereas the international Indo-Pacific Economic Framework seems to be a lot of talk. According to the latest article in the New York Times, it seems to be faltering. And then there's another initiative called the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. The thing is that it seems to tout something like $600 billion before 2027, but then the money is not there yet. But the most important thing, the difference between the PGII and the China's Belt and Road is that the PGII relies a great deal on private enterprise. And of course, the infrastructural projects, not a great number of them are not that commercially attractive, because you're talking about schools, hospitals, and even ports, and sometimes highways are in the very remote parts of those poor countries. So they most of them are not commercially attractive, and that throws the influence of the PGII into question. Now, the Belt and Road, again, not too many people pay attention to the details, is a massive, extensive kind of project which has been in existence for over 10 years. So there are 6 economic corridors linking China to Europe and around the rest of the world. There is a polar extension, the sea passage passing through the north of Russia, when the sea ice is melting because of climate change. And then there is a digital Silk Road with undersea fiber optic cables. So it's a massive project relying on the fact that China is the largest trading partner for 128 countries around the world, compared with only 58 for the United States. According to the latest scoreboard, based on a World Bank report, $1 trillion US dollars have been galvanized through China's Belt and Road, 3,000 corporation projects, and then in creating 420,000 local jobs around the world and lifting 40 million people out of poverty. But of course, there is a great deal of blowback and also the accusations of debt trap. But according to the latest UK-based NGO, Debt Justice, they look around the world and found that most of the developing countries owe more debt to Western commercial lenders than to China. Now, I mentioned the fact that China's strength lies in this centrality, 128 countries as the largest trading partner, and also exemplified by the fact that the world's 7 largest container ports, 10 container ports, 7 are in China. And to the extent that there are more currencies that move in tandem with the renminbi than with the US dollar, according to the research done by the Peterson Institute of Economics. So there is a perceived China threat now, and very popular myths about peak China. And China is perceived to be encroaching on the world order in the sort of governance system, in transparency, in open access. So and then there is the negative views of China are rising all over the world. So China's popularity is plummeted, according to the views research. And there are lots of books coming up on how China should be confronted and how China could lose its legitimacy around the world. And now China is almost at war with the United States, following Graham Ellison's Thucydides trap and a host of other books written on it. China's facing 4 traps, the so-called Tacitus trap, when no matter what it does, is viewed negatively. The middle income trap, which everybody understands, the Thucydides trap, and the Kinderberger trap, according to Professor Joseph Nye, and China seems to be ascending when there is a lack of global governance. And then China, of course, have a great deal of internal problems, the kind of an imbalance in its economy, and the aging demographics, and the asset bubble, as well as a lot of unemployment for the vast cohort of university graduates. But then President Xi already highlighted, alluded to the era of unprecedented challenges. And herein lies China's basic strength. According to the latest study of Australian Strategic Policy Institute, it's a critical technology tracker. It was published in March 2023. China seems to be, and it's based on the research of 2 million peer-reviewed papers. China seems to be leading in 37 out of 44 critical technologies that define the 4th industrial revolution. For example, in artificial intelligence, materials, manufacturing, energy and environment, and a host of others. And China is well positioned to drive, as I said, to drive the 4th industrial revolution, when the way people live, how businesses conducted are totally changed. And China, of course, is linked together with the world's largest high-speed rail network, 30,000 square kilometers, to double to 75,000 by the year 2035, linking a lot of city clusters on the bottom right-hand side, and with the high-speed rail, and that should drive productivity. And China is now becoming the Detroit for the next generation of electric vehicles. You can see that a lot of electric cars are being made in China and exported around the world. And China, of course, has already become a global e-commerce giant. And as for the demographics, a great deal of China's economic activity have been automated and also driven by robotics, even in agriculture, restaurants, supermarkets, hotels. China recently succeeded in extracting methane hydrate, which is a highly concentrated form of fossil fuel in the South China Sea. If it's completely realized, it would last China's energy needs, or the world's energy needs, for hundreds of years. And China's now become a green superpower in terms of wind power, solar power, hydroelectrics, and a space superpower as well. And in hypersonic intelligence weapons that can circumnavigate the globe, even though not on par with the United States, but at least with sufficient deterrence. And also have A2AD, anti-access area denial capabilities in the South China Sea. As for Taiwan, I think that China is not rushing into the war, but the perception in Beijing is that the United States seems to be pushing China towards the impossible. But of course, I think that Beijing is wise up to that challenge. And I talk about the rise of the global South. Africa is rising, and the East is also rising. The BRICS expanding the membership, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, China's deeply embedded in the RCEP, and the decoupling is not working, even though the term de-risking is not achieving much. And the rhetoric about democracy and autocracy, according to the Harvard Kennedy School, and also the Endowment Trust Barometer and the Paris-based Ipsos research, they all found that the Chinese people are amongst the people most supportive of the government and most trusted in the government. And these research papers come out only recently. And then there's no, according to the Chinese foreign minister, there is no Coca-Cola formula for democracy. Even though Western democracy may be the best political system, but no proof that it works for all nations and civilizations. And China's political system may not work for other nations, but clearly it has worked for China. And after all, democracy is a process, and the litmus test is the outcome. The outcome must be the livelihood of the people under whatever political system. So what's China's world in the interconnected world? is also to address some of the challenges facing the world, including climate change, inequality, pandemics, sustainable development goals, and common prosperity, and then working with the other nations together, because there is and with the global institutions, which perhaps would need some reforming, and perhaps involving into a kind of concert of powers for the 21st century with all the international institutions. And then, of course, China recently launched two initiatives, the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative, both working together with other nations and not trying to adopt an hegemonic position. And of course, the human rights are important: democracy, world peace, cooperation, and common prosperity. This is my last slide. And there's a very famous, very popular saying, countries can be very, very different, but that doesn't need to translate into conflict. So the co-opetition, in other words, cooperation and competition without wars. It seems to be the answer. But of course, it's a tall order with the world fracture as it is. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Andrew Leung, for keeping the exact right time, 13 minutes. And the last presentation from Dr. Horacio Maria Nere. Are you there online, Horacio?
Yes, here I am.
Okay,
Here I am.
please. What is yours?
So it is 30 minutes if I am right.
13
minutes.
1-3, please.
Perfect. So unfortunately, my speech was not on the program of the conference due to some issues. So I have to tell you presents the title, that is Belt and Road Initiative and the European Union, two integrative models compared. So first of all, I want also to thank you for your patience to hear my speech and to have permitted to me to speak to this important conference. Well, what is, and I have of course to say sorry for my bad English. That is not good at all, but I hope I will be understood. So what is my speech about, as the title would explain, is the role of these two institutions, very different institutions in the present world, that are the Belt and Road Initiative on one side, as an institution promoted from the China's government, and the European Union. Both of them are important to understand the period we live in. That is that one of the creation of some big regional conglomerations. So both of them are interesting also to understand how those political, geographical, regional integrations can work together, how they can relate, and how they do, in fact. And also to speak exactly about what is the relation that exists today between those two institutions and those two projects, because we are talking, in fact, about two projects that have also a political phase. They are both in some ways political and economical, and we will talk about it during the speech. And the third point is the importance to compare those two institutions, those two projects, to understand exactly also the doctrines that are work to form those projects, those ideas of integration. And this is useful, by the way, also to understand this political phase we've talked about. I've talked about that is this epochal phase of the greater geographical political integrations. I mean, those kind of integrations are not only of a political type, because as I told, it is very important to understand the political dimension, the economical dimension of the integration processes. Most of those projects are there are many, of course, in the world, and most of them are just economical, not only political. Of course, under every economical aspects, there are also political interests, but not always those two grounds collide or overlap. So we have also to see what is the role of politics and economics in those two integration projects. Talking about the European Union, we have to talk about the role of doctrine under its creation. Of course, the European Union was one of the it is one of the most important geographical regional integrations in the present time, and it is, in my opinion, I think we can say that it is the first regional integration that occurred with, I mean, with modern and with a modern way of doing this aggregation. The first integration that occurred starting from the 19th century to the present days. It happened, of course, due to some reasons that everyone knows. And we're talking about the wars, the belligerent conflictual phenomenons of the 20th century. So in its project, there is I have no presentation. I'm talking freely. So it was. Did you understood this? Okay. Fine. Okay. So so behind the European Union there is a most ideological perspective view. Ideological, I mean doctrinal perspective. That is the one of the, first of all, of the European peace, and then of the world peace. We have to understand also its the fact that the European integration came from the ideas of the Society of Nations by President Wilson and so on. There is a clear doctrine behind it. There is the doctrine for that explicitly say that nations have to live together in the possibility of doing commerce and exchange cultural activities with the support of an integrate market. Sorry. And this is the perspective used by the functionalists that were a party in the European Parliament and party of people between the founding fathers of the European Union. Their belief was that Europe can be found only using the market and the economy as the founding ground of the geographical regional integration. This integration has to be international integration because it has not to overcome the national the form of the nation state, but it has to integrate them with some over national over national structures that may guide them without deleting them or making them cease to exist as autonomous forms. Although there were also other important views about the European Union, as the federalists, for example, or people who think about the necessity to politically unite Europe as a state, as a sort of bigger nation state, and so on. But those lines did not prevail during the time of the forming of the European Union. I see that the time is running out, so I have to go suddenly to the Belt and Road. I try to be most precise as possible, but the time is little. So Belt and Road, as it was, as it is known, it is a project that was launched by the Chinese government, and it moves on the tracks of the economic integration in some ways as the same as the European Union in some ways. It proposes the creation of some infrastructures that may unite the markets of the Eurasian countries, and also can link China to the Middle East and other places in the world. It was projected also the possibility to connect Africa or New Zealand and so on. So it is a very important project, very, very wide one, large one. But of course, it may be, we can discuss about it also as an institution, because it is politically proposed by the Chinese Communist Party, by the Chinese government, and it moves on the tracks also of the diplomacy. So we can see it not only as
please conclude. Please conclude.
Okay.
Yeah.
The point is that, just to be very brief, that both of those projects, European Union and the Belt and Road Initiative, are a project of regional integration, and this is very important in our time, because we live in the age of the creation of those regional integrations. The difference is that Europe has a kind of doctrine that is a functionalist doctrine. It is grounded in political economy and so on, while the Belt and Road Initiative is grounded in a similar but different doctrine, that is the doctrine created by the Chinese Communist Party, that is the so-called global governance. Those doctrines have similarities and differences, but the time is limited and I cannot explain all of this. Thank you anyway.
Thank you. Now, thank you all for our distinguished speakers, and without further ado, I will immediately open the floor for a Q&A period. We have about 15 minutes left. So on the auditorium or online, please identify yourself and make a very objective your question or comments. The microphone, please.
Thank you so much for all the presentations. My name is Sadia, and I am a professor, assistant professor. I teach in Atatürk University in Turkey. I have two quick questions to different presenters. The first question is to the presenters who were addressing the BRI, so anybody can answer. You were addressing something related to digital surveillance, and you also mentioned about digital surveillance growing in Xinjiang, right? We all know this, and China is also exporting digital surveillance to different countries. We have cases in Venezuela, in Malaysia, etc. So to be very quick and precise, have you ever looked to the perspective that, or to the implications of China in exporting digital authoritarianism by creating a like-minded partnership with these countries? And to the second last speaker, Dr. Andrew, you were talking about China's rise in a multipolar world, right? I would add something to else, China's rise also in terms of multilateral institutions. So if you see that China has created several parallel international multilateral institutions, you talk about China-Africa Forum, China-Latin America, Caribbean States Forum, you talk about China as an independent observer in ASEAN, and several others, right? So we see China has its presence in several multilateral institutions. And it is not just present, it enjoys a political weightage, okay? Of course, the economic superiority exists there. So my question is, I would use a very strong term, is China weaponizing its economic interdependence by partnering or having a superior position in these multilateral institutions? Thank you.
Well, could I respond to that?
No, please wait. Please, Professor Leung, let's collect some more comments and questions.
Okay, all right, okay.
Thank you. Here online, I see no more hands. I have my own questions. So, if you please, I have a question, but to summarize only for three. For the last presenter, Dr. Orazio, how do you see Italy leaving the Belt and Road Initiative late this year, as announced last week? For our master student Tijs, I want your comment on the Japan-UK-Italy agreement on December 2022 to collaborate to build an advanced fighter, the so-called Global Combat Air Program. It was the first time that Japan did it with a foreign partner without being US. And finally, for Professor Andrey Leung, I please ask you some provocative questions. Your definition of multipolar world, because in your presentation, I hear only talk on US and China. All your arguments are meaning a bipolar world, US and China, China and US. The second question is, what are the other poles? In a multipolar world, you have several poles. South Africa, Brazil, Turkey, India, Japan, the EU. What are the other poles of a multipolar world? Also, this is my provocative question. You are mentioning and writing in your abstract that the Global Development Initiative and Global Security Initiative seek to resolve inherent conflicts and turmoils holding back progress. China is in a way moving back to the future, building a more multipolar world of peace, stability, and prosperity. So I want to ask you if you agree that Russia invaded Ukraine and if there is a war in Ukraine. And if so, do you agree that Russia violated UN Charter and Ukraine territorial integrity and sovereignty? And what is the alternative? To support the aggressive country and to sanction and criticize the aggressor country? Is doing business as usual? Is doubling the trade in a year and a half of war with the aggressor state? I'd like to hear not only your point of view, but China's policy concerning this back to the future, building a more multipolar world of peace, stability, and prosperity using the Russian-Ukraine case. Thank you. So we start giving the word to the presenters who were asked, and of course, if the other speakers want to add something, please go ahead.
So can I respond?
Yes, you may start, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I think that the world is not governed by theories, nor by rhetoric. The world is governed by real dynamics on the ground. And dynamics depends on power defined by economic size, economic connectivity, military power, and the ideological power, soft power. So all these translate into exerting a country's influence. Now, after the Second World War, the whole world was ruled by only one superpower, the United States, as the Europe was trashed by the Second World War, and the old power, the United Kingdom, Britain, borrowed heavily in debt and ceded the global governance to the United States, along with the US dollar. So this situation has been carrying on for a number of years. And then until the rise of China, of course, the intention was that to bring China into the global liberal order with the hope that, that China would become more like the West, without realizing that, of course, China coming from a different civilization, a different political system, and then have, of course, 58 ethnic components. So it's a totally different country with a much longer civilization compared with the Western world. And now China joined WTO, and then because Nixon went to see Mao Zedong and ditched the old China, Taiwan, and promoting the recognition of the Beijing as the legitimate country representing the whole of China, as that's supported by the United Nations Charter. Taiwan is not a country. But anyway, after all these years, China is perceived to be eating Americans' lunch, because the old time of outsourcing the cheap products to China when the American reaping huge products, how much money who's making the most money out of an Apple phone? Not China. China only making a fraction. It's the United States. But increasingly in recent years, China is now developing its own high-tech industries. And then even in some sectors, as I pointed out, in artificial intelligence and so on, it's threatening Americans' dominance. And so if you believe in the theory of geopolitics, according to Professor Mischmeyer, is called a tragedy of Greek power geopolitics. So Greek powers always want to maintain their own sovereignty. So inevitably, this translated into a 360 degrees pushback against China. However, China is becoming less isolated now, even though China's popularity has plummeted because of this blackening of China and the perceived lack of legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party, until, as I pointed out, this recent research show that the Chinese people do not feel suppressed. Well, of course they are. Their freedom has been constrained, but overall, their lives have been dramatically improved over the past 40 years. And that, as I pointed out, is the litmus test of legitimacy, regardless of any kind of regime. Because there doesn't need to be a Coca-Cola formula which can appeal to all tastes and all people, or least of all, impose on other nations. So anyway, because of all these conflict of economic power, military, and also confrontation in various theaters in the current South China Sea, we're seeing what we're seeing at the moment. Now, to answer this question on what is unipolar, there are other poles apart from China. India, of course, is rising. And of course, even the groupings, the BRICS, only about last couple of months, almost 20-odd countries are lining up to join the BRICS. The reason is why? Why? Most of these people wanting to join the BRICS are in the global south. They are developing countries. They are not rich countries. Why do they want to join the BRICS? It's because they feel that their sovereignty, in a way, have been compromised in the past because they are too weak. So they want to, and then they are under the beck and call of great powers like the United States. And the United States, of course, has weaponized the US dollar, apart from the military, power. The United States has got military bases in 600 places around the world. China is no match for it. But you don't need to match the same kind of extensive military power. But nowadays, wars are not fought like the Napoleonic wars, with soldiers lining up on both sides and shooting each other, and then the soldiers all coming up and in front and so on and so forth. But now it's called asymmetric warfare. All you need is to deny your opponents access to certain theaters, like the South China Sea, to be able to further your own interests there. But as for the multipolarity, I think China is promoting the most multipolar institution, of course, is the United Nations. And that's why China supports the United States Charter. Taiwan, even though some people think that Taiwan is not part of China, but that's recognized by the United Nations. And that's why even in the recent G20 communique, you see this phrase very carefully inserted. It is to all countries to support the United Nations Charter. Now, this phrase is very important in its entirety, because some countries, the big countries like the United States, they just cherry picking. I mean, they can invade Iraq and Afghanistan, and then also on some trump up charges, and they override other countries' sovereignty. And that's why China is not supporting openly Russia. But on the other hand, in a multipolar world, you just can't impose your own security concerns to other people. In other words, well, every country has security concerns. Russia also has its security concerns. So coming back to the Ukraine war, I just appeared on an interview in the with another channel just before this meeting, and it was on Kim Jong-un's visit to Moscow. And I draw the analogy between why Kim is North Korea, okay? And don't forget the Korean War. Has the Korean War ended? No. It is only an armistice, and the armistice is lasting for how long? So I think what we are seeing in Ukraine probably, I mean, there is no hope that the original hope is to topple Russia, without realizing Russia is the largest landmass in the world. The largest landmass country in the world is what? Russia. The second is Canada. The third is the United States. China is only the fourth. And then with a large landmass with rich resources, how can you topple Russia without serious consequences to the world? It's not possible. And now this there is a self-denial on both sides that somehow they could prevail. But then the realities on the ground says otherwise. So my reading is that given another 6 months, 10 months, both sides would be so tired together with the rest of the world that it's got to be some sort of a settlement. But at the moment, no one wants the West, led by the United States, doesn't want to settle, because they think that by settling the dispute, it would freeze the Russians' gains. And then Russia does not want to surrender. So I think that there's a kind of complexity there. I think I've touched on most of the points, but if there is another specific question, I've touched on the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party, relying on this 3 pieces of research: Harvard Kennedy School, Elderman Trust Barometer, the ISOS Research Center based in Paris, because is ultimately, regardless what system, it's the people that count, the people's livelihood. Have they improved? Have they deteriorated? No, I mean, that's the best litmus test. Okay, I think that I'll stop there.
Thank you. Now we move forward with the other presenters. I don't know who wants to take the floor first.
Maybe I can answer the question about the Global Air Combat Program. Is that all right?
Please go ahead.
All right. I think it's a great example of what I was talking about with Japan, sort of actively inviting other actors into the regional security complex. In this case, the UK and Italy. And I also think it's example of Japan developing its security and defense profiles. I was mentioning in December 2022, it published its latest national security strategy, upping its defense budget to 2% of its GDP, which was a historical move, and did get a lot of backlash from the population, which still, to a large extent, is pacifist. but they went through with it anyway, and I think this is a great example of how they are acting on not only upping that budget, but also actively implementing the budget to develop its military capacities, which it's set out to do in this national security strategy. Because in the strategy they mention the threat emanating from China and North Korea and the need for the development of new military assets to counter these threats. And I think the fact that they are choosing to cooperate on developing these assets with like-minded partners, as they also like to stress, the like-minded partners in Italy and the UK, and sort of inviting them into the Indo-Pacific regional security complex, shows Japan's efforts in trying to sort of build a coalition around the rise of China. That's how I interpret it, at least. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I think Fernando Amorim is here from the team of the first presentation. Could you please answer the question now?
Yes, about DSR and the surveillance and face recognition on surveillance. We yes, we are studying the impact abroad. Unfortunately, I couldn't speak fast enough that time. But yeah, yes, the exportation of the technology is we are searching on that. But one thing I personally think that we can compare is like, it's not only China that does that. China is doing inside and exporting the technology with let's say with the control of the polar infrastructure, the satellites and submarine cables. They can have access to all data that pass through those infrastructures. But the facial recognition and other parts are not only China that does. At this week, I could see on Financial Times an example in UK. The police are asking to implement in the whole UK to do the same, that utilize the cameras on subways and all this thing to recognize the faces of the people. That, and then this thing on is happening in a quick way, and that now is not just the technology coming from China or the state of surveillance, but the capitalism of surveillance is all around on the West also. But on our paper, we are focusing on China, and yes, we see that's it's a huge problem with a large scale surveillance and espionage can happen. Like one part that we couldn't talk is about the kind of virus, but it's not a virus that was found on the system, military system of the US. A couple months ago, they start to talk a little bit about this. There's that they can make the military systems on the abroad on the Navy slow, and on US military system, and make like hard to answer quickly to any confrontation. But if we focus only on the digital Silk Road, we are focusing more on Patagonia and Argentina, on the areas on the North Pole, to see that confrontation with the confrontation. I'm sorry, but to check how the potential of the espionage and the surveillance can go abroad when other countries accept to move from our Western companies to the Chinese control companies. But so far, most of them, like Huawei and other companies, say they are free from the. Most of them say they are free from the control of the government, but what's pointing is that usually any change inside of the politics of the government can change the way that those companies based on China secure the data they control.
Okay, Fernando, thank you. Let's move forward. Time is running. Dr. Orazio on Italy and Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah. Well, the issue is that, as you have said, the new government in Italy just blocked in some ways the development, of the Belt and Road in our country. But the fact is that we signed a memorandum 2 governments ago asking for the good relations with China, especially on the economical level, doing the Belt and Road, proposing the our shores to the Chinese ships, and so on. Those things were also cultural agreements, things like that. And those things are most of them are still I mean, the Italian government still does these things, those things, and it is because, in my opinion, what's happening in Italy about the Belt and Road is just politics in the way for which the government just give some. I mean, people at the head of the Italian state just says, depending on the situation, we want to be in the Belt and Road or we do not want to do it. And especially when they visit the international forums, especially with the Western partners, they say, no, we don't want to be in the Belt and Road, and then they think again about it because, of course, there are many. There is the interest, the biggest interest of the Italian businessmen to do it for obvious reasons, to increase the exports and so on. That means that when you read on the newspaper that Italy won't be anymore in the Belt and Road or will not do any kind of partnership with China and so on, I think that most of those things are not. I'm sure. I assure you that most of those things are not decided as real political acts, but are just political discourses. I mean, not it's not on the level of the decision making, but on the level of the public discourses. It is difficult to understand in some ways because it is very you have to be involved into the Italian interior politics to understand it, but it deals, of course, with special Italian ways to do international relations, I think. And when we signed
the time is
okay.
running and finished, we need to close our session. I thank you on behalf of all of us, all the wonderful speakers, 6 presentations. And of course, I please ask you a very big applause for our distinguished speaker.